Hey, what's up guys? Codepunk here. Welcome to another tutorial of our series Next.js. Today we're going to deep dive into the advanced routing. We're going to learn how we can create dynamic routes. So we have already learned how we can create simple routes like index, contact, about. Now we are going to see how we are going to create the dynamic routes like we do in the blogs, where we do not know what is the route URL of the page. Like when we create posts in our blogs, every post has a dynamic ID or a slug in a URL. So first of all, I'm going to create a folder called posts, and in that post folder I'm going to create our dynamic route. So this is going to be our first dynamic route, and we're going to type an opening square bracket, and in that square bracket we're going to type the name of our parameter. So this is going to be id closing square bracket .js. Let's quickly create a component and export that. Let's test this out by going to our browser and navigating to localhost 3000/post/anything called 23, right? We get that component which says new post, right? So what we eventually do is we get that ID in our component and fetch that post data from our database and display that post over here. So how do we access this ID in our component over here? For that, we need to use a use router hook provided to us by NextJS. So we're going to import that use router from next/router over here, and we're going to save that return from that hook in the router, and all of this information from the URL we get in this router object. Let's come over here and console.log this router.query. So in router there is a query object or a key which has all of these params inside it. So let's save and try again, going back to browser, doing a reload, and let's check our console. We have an object logged into the console. Let's expand that, and we see that we got ID 23 in that. Okay, so we can display this ID by getting that ID, extracting that from router.query, and let's display that ID over here. New post with ID like this. Don't need this anymore. Going back to the browser, we get that. So if I navigate to the /post/101, we get new post with ID 101, and we can fetch our post data, which we will learn in the future in our next tutorial. How can we fetch data from our database and display that over here? So next thing is how we can catch all of our routes in a file. So let's suppose we have a structure called like this, categories/abc, and we have a route over here for that. So let's create a categories folder, a new file in that folder called anything slug.js, and let's copy and paste that existing component over here. So category, right? So we say all categories with slug, right? And we get that slug from router.query. Okay, so we get that all categories with ABC, right? What if we have another term called DEF, and we also want the categories of ABC and DEF over here by using this route, right? But we get 404. So if we want to fetch all of the sub routes, like chained like this, GHI, or kind of like this, we have to add 3 dots in the square brackets before our parameter like this. Now this page will catch all of the routes inside categories. So if we have anything like this, it gets rendered like this. So but now slug is not a string. Now slug is an array. So we get an array with slug. So let's console.log and check. So we get all of the route params in the slug as an array, and we can process that array in any way we want, getting the data from the database any way we like. So that's how we catch all of the routes in a single route. One more thing I want to call out over here is if we go back to our simple dynamic route, first, let's say our component is rendered, right? And after that, we get the ID over here. So let's say ID is this. So first, whenever our component is rendered, this ID will be empty. You see, first our component is rendered, then ID is undefined, then it is again rendered and ID is undefined. After that, we have the 23 ID. So what eventually happens is Next.js loads our component without this param first, and then it does the hydration. And what hydration means is it renders the component first and then fills that component, that rendered component, with the data provided. So first it does the hydration, and then afterwards it provides the component with the ID and re-renders that component. So that's how Next.js works. That's how it optimizes our websites for page speed. Thank you for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe and turn that notification bell icon to get latest tutorials right in your inbox.